Hello there and welcome to the free PTE and IELTS mini course. On this mini course we will talk about both exams, the main things that people do wrong and how you can get ready. So we're going to be covering those three areas and I'll be sharing a few things with you. So let me just minimize this window and go ahead and talk about both exams. So the first thing we'll do is talk about the general training IELTS test. This one is quite popular. Actually, just before we jump into the test, it is worth mentioning that there are a few differences between the two exams, and probably, let's say, the issue number one is when a candidate or when a test taker gets ready to do either or basically any English exam, and they just think, okay, I know English, I can talk to people or I can watch movies, I got this, and they just jump into it and they don't know what they're getting into. So our first video, which is this one, we will quickly go through the main areas of each exam. So for the first section on the IELTS test, we have the listening part where you're going to have different types of gap fill questions. In this one, for example, we can only put one word or a number. Sometimes people get errors here because they put two words, and as soon as you put two words, boom, automatically it is incorrect. So that would count as an answer that is not right. Then for the next one, we have some multiple choice type of questions where, again, we would be listening to the recording and we have to answer, or let's say select accordingly. Sometimes we need to be extra careful because there are some types of questions, let's see, we should probably get those later on, where you can choose two options. But in this case, you should only put one. You want to get as much as you can from this one. Here, again, we have another type of gap fill question when we basically have a bit of a conversation, right? And our job will be to fill it out. And as we said at the beginning, this is an IELTS general training test. Usually on the general training, it is quite common to get things like this, where you have conversations, or maybe it's someone calling out to a hotel or something to do with tourism. It involves more conversations. This one here is probably one of the trickiest questions, this one down here, and it is the matching activity, as I like to call it. And this one is quite tricky because, as you can see down here, we have a box and our job is to match that or some of those statements with what we've got here in the prompts at the bottom. So we've got all the different options from 21 to 26. What makes this one even trickier is that sometimes you are given more options. Wait, I think this is the case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, in this case, that's exactly what happened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So basically, we are given two extra options, and we have to be very careful because, again, sometimes by not paying attention, this is the type of question where most candidates can get less points, or where they would miss out on the most amount of points. In here, we've got, again, another multiple choice type of question. And look, we have the one that I mentioned earlier. We have here the two letters, A and E. Sorry, from A to E. So basically, we would look at the question, we would listen to part of the audio or the recording, and we have to answer this one and pick two options. Even if you are not sure, it's best to pick two, because if you only pick one and you're 100% sure and you get it correctly, then you're missing out on one mark. So it's better to try to choose two. That's what I would recommend in this case. And then again, we've got another listening with one word only, and that would be the end of the listening test, which, by the way, it goes for about let's say 40 minutes, because it's 30 minutes listening, and then if you're doing the test in paper, the paper version, you would have about 10 to 15 minutes. I believe it's around 10. Let's be on the safe side. About 10 minutes to pass all your answers into the answer booklet. But if you're doing it online, I think this step is skipped. Then we've got the reading test, and on the reading section, this is for both general and academic, we will have usually 3 to 4 reading passages, and then we've got questions from the passages. This one here is probably the most infamous type of question, the true, false, and not given. We need to be extremely careful. Here, where people tend to get it wrong is with the difference between false and not given. And I could spend another mini course only talking about that, but what I will say is read the question carefully and read the text carefully. I think this is an area where people tend to go, where they tend to have trouble. So we've got true, false, not given. Then we've got here our second passage. And in here we've got another type of matching activity where we can basically match a certain statement with a certain paragraph from the text that we've got here with us. So sometimes you basically have paragraphs A to E, and then you need to match the statements that we have here from 7 to 14 with those that we've got here in the options. The next one is going to be, again, another text. And then here we have a type of a gap fill activity where this is going to be related to what we had before. And from reading the text, we have to fill these ones out. We have to answer this with no more than 3 words. And again, this is similar to what I said just earlier, where people tend to have trouble with this. So it is recommended to put 1, 2, or 3 words. You cannot put 4. If you put 4 words, guys, you are going to get it incorrect, even if you have the correct answer. So be extra careful. Then we've got another short passage here for the third part of the text, and it's quite similar, as you can see, but instead of having, let's say, the full text the full text box like I showed you just before, here we have a statement or a sentence, and then we just have to fill it out. And sometimes we need to be paying attention to certain cues. For example, here it's got the pound symbol, so it means that we probably need to put a number, right? And again, little things like this can help us to make it less challenging for us. We've got here another passage, and this will probably be our last one. And here we've got, again, some multiple choice questions, very straightforward, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. And again, in this case, this is also a matching type of activity where we need to look carefully at each paragraph and then match which paragraph contains this information here. And then last but not least, we've got just these ones here where we just have to complete the summary with 1 word from the text. Again, 1 word only, no more than 1. I don't want to be repeating myself too much, but this is something that you really need to be careful. Then we've got the writing section. The reading section, in case I missed it, goes for 1 hour. The writing section also goes for 1 hour, and it is the same for academic and for general when it comes to the length. The reading will probably be a little bit more challenging on the academic. Maybe the vocabulary is going to be a bit different, and the scoring is also a bit different, but don't worry, because we will talk about that in just a minute. Then we have got the writing section. On the writing section, we have 1 hour and we have to do 2 tasks on IELTS, academic or general. In this case, we've got a letter that we have to send to a friend. This is probably the biggest difference between IELTS academic and IELTS general. If you're doing academic, you are not going to get a letter, you are going to get something slightly different. Let me show you. You will get something more like this, where you have to describe a chart, where you have to describe a graph. But again, it will be the same task. You have the same amount of time, 20 minutes, 150 words, and you would have to describe and summarize the information that is shown to you here. This one is actually quite a tough one, but sometimes you can get a bar chart, or you could get a line chart, or even just one of these. And it's a matter of practicing how we can describe them. And then, as I said, here we've got a letter. So we've got the formal letter and an informal letter. On my YouTube channel, I've got some videos about answering this type of letters, so you can go and check them out somewhere down there. And the next part is going to be the essay. So for the essay question, we've got an essay task where we are asked, let's say, our opinions, agreeing or disagreeing, or to what extent do we agree, why do we think that this happens. So this could be like cause and effect. There are different types of questions, but probably with this one we need to be extra careful with the time, because again, we have 40 minutes. Sometimes people are on 2 sides. One would be writing way too much. So for example, look, the word count here is 250. I've met people that do 350 words, and that's probably too much. And on the flip side, there are others that write barely 200, so it's something that we need to be careful and try to adjust to and be closer to this word count. This would probably be the IELTS test, because the next part is going to be the speaking, and on this one you're going to get a short interview where you have 3 parts. And I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but on part 1 we have short get to know you type of questions. It's going to be general questions about a topic that are not super difficult, and you should be able to answer them on the spot rather quickly, and then talk a bit about them. Then on the second part you will have a question like the one that you see on the screen, where you'll be given 1 minute to answer this question. You will be given pen and paper, so you can take some notes on pen and paper if you want. And then on the third part, and on the second part, you will talk for 1 to 2 minutes. That's also quite an important thing, because sometimes candidates do not reach that minute, or they talk a bit more. And if you talk a bit more, that's okay, because the examiner will stop you, and that should be not a problem. Just be mindful, because you don't want to be stopped many times. And then the last part is going to be some discussion topics or follow-up questions. Sometimes the examiners have different names for these ones, but basically you will have a theme, right? And as you can see on the screen, part 2 is about a hotel going on holidays, right? And then the discussion topic is related to that one. This doesn't always happen, but I would say most of the time. There is a high chance that if you have a certain topic on part 1 or on part 2, that it is what you will get on part 3. And with these follow-up questions, what I like to tell students is that it is a mix of part 1 and part 2, because on part 1 we have to answer quickly, and we need to give sort of a, let's say, a short to medium answer. Then on the second part, we're given a longer question, right? So we are given time to think, and then we can organize our ideas, and then give the, let's say, the answer as a short or as a mini presentation, if you wish. But then on the third part is a combination of 1 and 2, because now you have a question that you have to answer on the spot that is not as simple as part 1, and it's not as complicated as part 2, because it's not very long. So it's somewhere in the middle, and you're asked usually your opinion, or you're asked to discuss something. Most of the time you are going to be asked an open-ended question, and you need to be careful. You don't want to just keep a very short answer towards these ones. So on this third part, as the name says here on the screen, discussion topics, so you would want to discuss, to cover in a bit more detail, and this will greatly help you when it comes to the preparation, or when it comes to, let's say, the overall interview. You don't have to talk way too much, but I think a problem sometimes is that candidates talk just a little bit, and that could affect them. And this would be the full IELTS test. Like I said, normally the biggest differences will be on the listening and the reading, and on the writing, of course. And just before we finish up, because I know PTE people are waiting, when it comes to the listening, basically this table that we have here on the screen is a rough estimate of what you can expect to get when it comes to the listening scores, when it comes to the reading scores in academic, and the reading scores in general training. So as you can see here on the screen, the scores are going to change. So for academic and for general, depending on the score that you need, it's going to probably be a bit different, and it is something just to be mindful of. Thank you so much, IELTS people. It is time to move into PTE. So, PTE people, thank you so much for the wait. Now it is time to get started with PTE Academic. Let's just get started, and the first thing on PTE is going to be our personal introduction. This one is not scored, so you can take your time doing this one. Then we've got the read aloud practice, and on read aloud, as the name says, we just have to read aloud what the prompt or what the paragraph is. And we are gonna have a bit of time before we answer it, and on the test you will get one by one. So for example, the one that I've just highlighted in blue, you will get all that on the screen. You'll be given some time to look at it, then you will read it out loud, it's gonna get recorded, you hit next, and you move on to the next one. Then the next bit is gonna be repeat sentence, and with repeat sentence, as the name says, is going to be where we listen to a sentence and we repeat it. For example, Emilio is a good teacher, and you would need to listen to it and then repeat, Emilio is a good teacher. And thank you. So that would be the first part of the speaking test. The next one is when we have photos like these ones. Probably you have seen these ones before. These ones are called describe image. The image that you're gonna get is likely going to be a graph of any kind, a bar chart, a line chart, a pie chart, and you will have to describe it in 40 seconds. Don't worry, before you start describing it, you're given some time, and you should try and cover most of the things that you can see on the photo. And as the name says, you have to describe in detail, but I will also tell students that it's good to summarize, because there are going to be some graphs, like probably this one here that we've got here down here, that are going to be packed with information, and it's going to be rather difficult for us to work on this one. So we're going to have a few graphs. They're going to look a bit like the ones we've got here on the screen. Then we've got the next part, which is retell lecture. The cool thing, or like the interesting thing about PTE, is that some bands are interconnected, and this is our first example. We will listen to a recording, and then we have to write a short summary about it. So on this one, well, sorry, not write a short summary, we're gonna describe it, or we're gonna talk about it, and that's how we are gonna be doing this task. You will listen to an audio file, and then you're gonna take some notes, and once you're ready to start repeating back the main things or a summary of the lecture of what you heard, that's when you will hit record and then move on and describe this one. In this one I said that you can take written notes, because on PTE you are given some pen and paper to write, and again I think this would be a really good option, because sometimes let's say the audios that we have are packed with information. So a challenge for us is to ask ourselves which one is the easiest, which one is the most difficult, or what is key information versus what is extra information. So we're gonna have a few of those, and then we have the last one for the speaking section, which is answer short question. Just for the sake of simplicity, answer short question is when we say something like this. You will hear a sentence, and then at the end there's gonna be a sound, boop, and you have to reply after the sound. For example, what is the device used to record video? And then you have to answer, probably camera, video camera, webcam, something along those lines. Sometimes there's going to be more than one answer correct, or there are going to be some options where you could have more than one, but many times it is quite clear. So again, just take this example I just did with a pinch of salt, because it's not always like this one. That will be the speaking test, and then after speaking we have writing. One of the biggest difference with IELTS and PTE is the time, because on this one we have only 10 minutes. It sounds like it's not too bad, but it goes quickly, guys, so we have to be extra careful. On this one we will basically we're gonna read the summary, and we need to summarize it in one sentence only, and this sentence should be about 35 to 75 words. And then we've got some summaries, but normally we will do on the test 1 or 2. And then we have the write essay. This is again very similar to IELTS. The questions are not going to change too much. Normally on PTE, as you can see here, like the information we are given for the essay question is a bit longer. So when they write the questions on PTE, it's going to be like this, like a lengthy question. And then again, which of these do you support the most? And then you can support with reasons, arguments, examples, and again, it's a very similar type of question. The biggest difference, however, is the time, because on IELTS we have 40 minutes. On this one we have only 20 minutes. And another big difference is the word count. On IELTS, maybe you remember, or maybe if you haven't watched that section, in IELTS we have 250 words, roughly, but here we have between 200 and 300. So it is a bit more flexible, and maybe one reason for this is because we have less time. And for my PTE people, if you're watching this, I highly recommend you practice your typing skills so that you can produce your essay much faster, and then you can save time and be a bit more efficient. So that would be the writing section. Then we have reading, and on reading, PTE is where it gets way more different. So we're gonna have, in this case, multiple choice, single answer, nothing new here. And then we also have multiple choice, multiple answer. This one is a little bit different. And the biggest thing I will say is that because it says multiple answers, you need to pick more than one. Sometimes candidates just pick one answer and they're missing out on some points because, for example, in this case, the one that we have down here, we have questions 1 to 7. And in this case, if you have about 1 to 7, there is a high chance that you're going to have at least, let's say, between 2 and 4 correct answers. Maybe if you have less, it's gonna change the range. This is just an estimate, but you could even have 5 of these answers. Sorry, you could have even 5 correct answers. And again, if you only put 1, you're missing out on some precious marks that you don't want to be missing out on. The next part is going to be this one here, where we have the paragraph organization, and it's simply a text that we're given in a randomized sequence, and what we have to do is to have a quick read and then organize them in the correct order. This one is a practice test, but on the exam you can click and move this section, so you can click on A and move it around and so on and so forth. The next bit is going to be our fill in the blanks, and again, talking about moving things up, this one is what I call drag and drop, because with this text box you are going to be able to click it and move the words where you want to place them. Again, this one is for practice, so you can type it, you can write on it, and our job is going to be to simply have a quick read at this paragraph and then decide where those words that we've got here, where should they go, and then we just need to put them in the right place. There is another one which is very similar to this one, and people tend to have a bit of trouble, which is this one here. This one looks quite different. This one is very different on the test because you don't have this part that I'm about to highlight. All these that you see, all these bits that you see in blue, you don't get the options like this. So do not panic. On the exam, you're gonna click on it, and when you click on number 1, 4 options will drop down, and then you have to pick one of those 4 words. And the same goes for number 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So basically you click on the missing blank, and then you will get all the options, and then you need to pick the correct option. That would be for the reading. And as you can see, we've got some extra activities here. Then we have the listening section. Another example of combining different skills for PTE, because the first thing we have is summarizing a spoken text. So quite similar to what we did before with retail lecture, we're going to listen to a recording, we can take some notes, and then we have to write a short summary of what we listened to. Imagine that someone did not listen to that audio file and they cannot listen to it. They can only look at your summary. And then we will need to write a summary that goes for 50 to 70 words. And for this one, you will be given the magical 10 minutes. Again, something a bit different, and this is again an example of how listening and writing are combined on the test. Multiple choice with multiple answers and multiple choice with single answers. This is nothing too new. And again, it's something that we just need to be careful, because if it is multiple answers, we want to pick more than one. Nice, we have a different one, fill in the blanks. This is one of my favorite activities. We have a blank text like we do here, and all we have to do is to listen and write down the missing words. So for example, almost everyone has heard of the London Exchange, but very few know almost anything. So in this case, I just said the word very, so you would put very few or a few. You just need to write down whichever word is said. Simple as that. Then we've got highlighting the correct summary, and this is an example of listening and reading getting together, because now you have to look at these 3 summaries and then have a quick read, listen to an audio file, and you need to decide which of these summaries relates the best to that audio file. Which one has, let's say, the closest match. This one is one that students tend to have trouble, so be careful with this one. The next bit we have is multiple choice, like I said, and single answer. So this one, again, nothing new. Okay, this one is a really interesting one. This is called select missing word. We will listen to a sentence or part of a sentence, and then we will hear a beep, just like we did before. We will listen to it, and then beep, and you need to decide which one of these would be the best one. So it's a mix of listening, a bit of reading, and also grammar, because we need to decide what is the best match in this case. And sometimes we also have it just with one word. So for example, Emilio is a teacher that loves using his boop, and you need to decide who loves using his notes, who loves using his accounts, who loves using his drafts, his papers, his charges, and then you need to decide which one is going to be the correct one. So again, it's worth just being extra careful, because with these ones we can also have a bit of trouble, so we need to be very, very focused, guys. This one is my personal favorite, and it is quite simple. We are just going to be listening to an audio, and the audio will be the same thing that we have here on the text. And you're gonna have some incorrect words. When you're doing the exam, you will just listen and click the words that are different. So for example, when the European Economic Forum, so this word is different because I said forum, but here it says community. So when you listen to a word that is different, you just click on it, it's gonna change, it's gonna get highlighted, and then you just keep listening, and it's really fun. You just have to do is to click. Probably in this one you can relax a little bit. I mean, obviously you have to be careful, but I mean, you don't have to be super tense. All you do is just clicking. You listen and click, 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 and that would be it. And the last one, this is the end of the PTE test. Write from dictation. You will listen to a sentence and you will have to type it quickly. This is where I would say 99% of students have trouble and struggle. So be extra careful when you're practicing for this one. You need to really work on your typing skills and be very, very careful with what you listen, so that you can listen, retain the information, and then quickly type it. Alright then, thank you for joining me on the first video of the free IELTS and PTE mini course. Now we have covered a few different things. We know the structure of both exams, which is something that some candidates do not know. We also noticed some of the biggest differences between IELTS, Academic and General. We also looked at PTE, and we looked at some questions where candidates tend to have trouble. So now that we covered those three, it is time to go for a quick break, go have a coffee, get some tea, relax, listen to a song, and then come back into our next video where we will talk about the speaking section in both exams. And I'll cover one speaking tip that will help you bump up your score and get a better grade, hopefully. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.